Y'all was working in the greenhouse, and Will's over here mulching the potatoes. And the cows and the horses are starting to congregate to watch him because they see the hay. They're mooing at him. Like, hey, why are you putting my lunch over there? I'm over here. We had a freeze last night. I was looking around, and I think for the most part, everything growing out here is still fine. It's all pretty frost hardy, at least a little bit. And thankfully, my greenhouse stayed above freezing, though not by a whole lot. I'm working out here now, and I've got the door open, but I'm gonna close it up whenever I'm done and let it heat up in here pretty good this afternoon, because it's getting just slightly colder tonight. I had a heater running in here. These windows here, I think, are the biggest culprit for us losing heat. And Maya actually created some panels that we can attach over these to shore up the greenhouse. And he said he would come out here and put them over them this afternoon. So hopefully it's okay, because I got a lot of stuff out here. It would be devastating if it died. Here I've got butterfly peas. I thought that I'd had just really poor germination, because these have come up and grown so much, but then I noticed today that I actually have a few more just popping out. So maybe some are just taking a little bit longer. These are the nasturtiums that Benjamin planted, and they're starting to come up. I've been separating some of the tomatoes that I sowed thickly. That's what this is. Here are some different basils. Some of these are fresh. Some haven't germinated yet, but like when you have a whole variety that hasn't germinated and others that have, it's probably just taking a little longer. Some more thickly sown tomatoes. Now when I sow thickly like this, I'll put a bunch of seeds in one container, and I like to wait until they're starting to get their first true leaves like this, because you can have late germinators. So if I were to start separating these, there's probably still a lot of seeds in here that haven't germinated, and so I don't want to miss out on those. So I'm going to give them more time. Here I've got some cosmos, some black magic cosmos, and some Rosetta cosmos. More separated tomatoes. You can see these real true leaves, and you're like, oh, there's no stem there. That's because I take these when they're this tall and I plant them all the way down in here, because for a tomato, if you plant the stem, it's actually going to sprout roots off of that stem, so you can plant tomatoes deeply. This is a tray of ground cherries. Ground cherries can take a while to germinate. It's one of those ones people sometimes think they have failed at, when really they just haven't waited long enough. They're very, very small when they first come up, but I have no doubt that we'll have a tray full soon. More thickly sown tomatoes here. Some borage there in the back. This is a tray of peppers that was more recently sown, and these aren't quite up, but I can see them just barely starting to pop up, and they'll stand up probably this evening or tomorrow. More peppers, same here. Maya's working on something out there, so I hope it's not too loud, but I was gonna finish up showing you guys all of my little babies. More peppers up here. They all look really good. This is the tray I'm super excited about. I think I'm actually gonna move it so I can gawk at it easier. I actually think I'm about to just expand into the rest of the greenhouse. We were kind of waiting in order to try to do the water lines and the table, but we had some other things that had to take priority. So I think I'm just gonna fill in, use it as I can, you know, pulling, basically there's a hose outside, I'm just pulling here, and use a temporary table. And then once I'm cleared out, Maya can come in and build, and that way we're not in each other's way. So this tray, these are some of my micro dwarfs, and it's so fascinating to me. So like, let me see. And here's a variety that's not a micro dwarf, and you can kind of see that little sprout. This is not leggy, that's just like a healthy tomato plant. But these are the micro dwarfs that already have their first couple of leaves coming in. And like, look how stocky and short they are, which is really neat. You can really see the genetics of the plant starting out early. Which, let me share this little tip with you guys. So these are the ones that I've been working on separating out. These are some Wild Boar Farms varieties, and they were the first ones that I started. This is Brad's Atomic Grape. It's a variety that has a lot of anthocyanins in it. So if you ever see like a tomato variety or even peppers, any sort of fruit that's going to have those dark purple coloring to the skin, the dark purple shoulders, that's because of a high count of anthocyanins. Carrots, purple carrots, like anything like that. And you can see on these plants, like, do you see how the stems are very purple? This is a tricky thing with seed starting, and usually here soon, people will start posting pictures online of their seedlings, and they will start showing specifically plants that have like a dark purpling under the leaves, and that can be a phosphorus deficiency. Sometimes if your plants are getting like too much sun or not enough sun, you'll see some different coloring and purpling coming in on the leaves. Sometimes you'll see a yellowing coming in, which is typically a nitrogen deficiency. But you have to take into consideration the plants. So like those atomic grapes, the stems are already turning super purple. Underneath the leaves is getting purple. That variety has a lot of anthocyanins. And so there's some of that that can be normal. This is one of the reasons I like starting my seeds in potting soil. I just use like a regular organic potting soil because it already has some nutrition in that soil. If you started in a sterile seed starting mix, it's okay, and there are benefits to using those. A lot of people really like them, but they do not have any sort of like organic nutrition. They don't have organic matter in that soil. It's a sterile mix, a soilless mix. And within the first couple weeks, your seedlings are going to grow, and by the time they start growing those first true leaves, they have at that point used the nutrition that they had in the seed. They're out of energy. And they're going to need some sort of, either to be potted up into soil that has organic matter that they can use for nutrition, or they're going to need to be fed some sort of fertilizer, like a liquid fertilizer. I usually wait because I am starting my seeds in potting mix, and maybe when my seedlings are getting about like 4 to 6 weeks old, so they're like pretty good size, I will greatly dilute, like an organic liquid fertilizer. Do not, and I repeat, I'm going to say this loud and clear to save your seedlings, do not get fertilizer happy on these little seedlings. Like, you can kill seedlings by over fertilizing them. And a lot of times people think, oh no, I see purpling on my leaves, must be a deficiency, and then they go overdo the fertilizer and their seedlings end up really struggling. I am actually willing to let a little bit of discoloration come on before I do anything, because for the most part, it's okay. And like I said, a lot of times it's just the variety. And sometimes there will be a little bit of discoloration that goes away. So I do not step in and fertilize. Of course, my seedlings are in potting soil. If you're in a soilless mix, you'll need to pot up or feed them. But if you do feed a liquid fertilizer, make sure you read the instructions. A lot of times it's like a capful in a whole gallon of water or something like that. It's very diluted, and you think, oh, this is a good thing, so I should double that or triple that or quadruple that, because more of a good thing can only be more of a good thing, right? Wrong. It's not the case. Do not supersize the fertilizer on your plants, especially seedlings. They can't process it, and then it causes damage. Can cause them to either stunt or die. So with these seedlings, like I had these all in that cup, and they were starting to look really purple, but then I potted them up into, like, I separated them out so they had more space, and their coloring is starting to normalize a little bit. So they probably were a little deficient because there were so many in the cup, but now it's leveling out now that they have more access to their own soil. Another little seedling tip. You guys see me touch my seedlings a lot. Like, I'm always reaching down and kind of like running my hands over them or just brushing past them a little bit. This is actually very much on purpose. I'm not doing that simply because I'm a tactile person. My seedlings are in this environment where the air's not moving. Now, I have fans in here, and when those fans are moving, the air is moving in here. And I actually am going to grab another fan because it's been warm, so the vent fans in the greenhouse have been just going nonstop. So the air's always moving, the seedlings are always just slightly moving. But as the weather's cooled off this week, they're not. And I don't even want to give them a week of perfectly still air. So I'm going to grab another fan from inside the house. Some sort of resistance on those seedlings is going to grow them stronger. So when you're touching them, you're moving them, you have a fan blowing around them. You don't necessarily want to put a fan like directly on them. I'm not trying to beat them up. I'm not going to be rough with them. I'm just gently touching them. And that is giving those stems something to grow strength against. Because as you imagine, if you grow plants in your house or in a greenhouse in a very still environment where they never have to resist any wind, what's going to happen when you put them out in the garden? So definitely set a fan up wherever you have your seedlings going, and it doesn't hurt to touch them either whenever you go by. Say hello. I've actually got my photo camera out here. Oh, and you know what? I've been meaning to tell you guys about this. Y'all, do you see this? I'm so glad that I remember this. Years ago, I received a gift in the mail from a viewer, and it was a collar for my dog Bear, and the brand was this Roughly brand. And I thought it was really cool looking, but I looked it up, and this company was founded by a fellow Jess. She got a German Shepherd, so she had a little shadow dog also. And when she started looking into, I guess, dog gear, she found out that so much of it was like factory manufactured, and she started this company for ethical dog gear. And these are actually handmade in Guatemala, but she also started making camera straps. So I have this camera strap, I have the purple one too. Lulu now has her Roughly collar. But look at this, like, is that not so cool? This is like all these tiny little hand knotted knots that make this design. Isn't that awesome? I had this, it was in a vlog, I don't know, at one point. I've been taking a lot of photos, and Jess sent me a message. She was like, Roughly spotting, and I think that it's a really cool company. I'll put a link. She's doing something really neat. She's like on this world traveling adventure with her dog and rides her motorcycle with her German Shepherd, rides the motorcycle with her. It's really neat. She's on Instagram too, and I always love it when her stuff pops up. So I grabbed my camera and saw that, and I thought I would tell you about it, because here's to following the people who are doing good and cool things in the world, right? Nice. So it froze last night, froze the tops of the potatoes, and we should have done this before, but you know, it's okay. Hopefully they won't get stunted. It's very windy. So this is hay. Hay is not my favorite mulch. I prefer straw mulch because it's a little more insulating. Hay is a grass crop. Straw is the byproduct of a cereal crop. So straw is just the shaft of the cereal after it's been threshed and the cereal has been taken out. So it's just a hollow shaft. Therefore, it's more insulating. It also has less seeds in it, whereas hay is the whole part of the plant, the grass crop, and hay will sprout. And so when you mulch with hay, you still have to weed, but they're not deeply rooted sprouts. They're just right there in the mulch. So it's not hard to pull them out, and it does suppress the deeply rooted weeds. So it's still beneficial to mulch with the hay. But that's what I was able to find that I could get guaranteed from the person who grew it, that had not been sprayed with any herbicides, graze on with Roundup, with anything like that, and it hadn't been. We were really very cautious this year. Mostly our cows ate hay that we cut from Papa T's land next door, and my friend Hannah had cut some, and we knew both of those hadn't been sprayed, but we ran out of hay in the last month, and so we had to source some, and so we had to ask lots of questions to try to find some that hadn't been sprayed with anything, because obviously if we were to feed our cows that hay, then it would render their manure unusable on the garden. It's quite a hassle, actually. So windy. Y'all, those are some volunteer sunflowers right there. They got a little frost damage last night, looks like, but still there. That's kind of cool. All right, so I came into the high tunnel. We have two high tunnels. We have this high tunnel where everything's in the ground, and then the high tunnel over here, that is where the lovely artichokes are and the cabbages, where we have some shallow raised beds and then graveled walkways. So the original plan was that this was going to be like the nightshade high tunnel, and that was going to be a perennial high tunnel. But I learned over winter, I don't want a perennial high tunnel, because honestly, here in mild South Carolina, I could grow food all winter in a high tunnel. And perennial high tunnel, everything's dormant in the winter. So I felt like it was a waste of that space because most of those things do just fine outside here. This high tunnel is the tunnel that last year we bought compost that had some sort of contaminant in it that damaged my nightshades. And we did a lot of remediation, worm teas, biochar, mushrooms, and then growing things like sunflowers and wheat that are heavy feeders. We're gonna test this with some beans and see where it is, but I shared with you guys that I was feeling really uninspired with this space, and a few of you responded that maybe it would be a good place to grow cut flowers because then I don't have to worry about the contamination, and it would potentially be something that would bring joy and maybe heal the disappointment that happened here. And I thought that was such a wonderful idea. I've always grown cut flowers, not really for the sake of growing cut flowers or selling them, but really just throughout the garden I've grown different varieties, and from the beginning to the end of the growing season we always have mason jars all over our house full of cut flowers because I love bringing flowers into the house. So I think that's gonna be really cool. I mentioned it to Will, and we're going to kind of get our heads around a plan. I'm not really looking to like do peak production, though as we get ready to open our shops downtown, I definitely know I will have a place that I could market cut flowers. You know, we could grow them to sell some. I'm not really looking to like make that a big business. This would more be for enjoyment, some marketing, being able to give them away, but also to kind of redeem this tunnel. Right now there's some beets in here. We have a lot of strawberry plants in here, which we're gonna move these out to a permanent place. We just put them in the ground in here just to kind of have a place to put them. I actually feel like the soil is doing significantly better, but like I said, we're gonna test it. We have a lot. There's the volunteer sunflower. We have a lot of volunteers coming up. Here's volunteer nasturtiums. These got a little damage from that freeze, but they're still growing. Rutabagas and a couple of other things in here. But yeah, I think that's gonna help a lot as far as making this tunnel beautiful again. So Will and I were just discussing what we wanted to do with the beds as they are. More volunteer sunflowers. And I don't know if we're going, like, we're not going to take this soil out, but I don't know, we might configure the shape of the beds that would be more conducive for flowers. I think we may end up doing kind of some shallow raised beds and adding some soil to it or something like that. But this has definitely been a learning experience, and I think it will continue to be one. I'm very curious to see how beans do in the soil. The contaminant that, if you're new around here, the contaminant that killed all the nightshades legumes were also extremely sensitive to it. We feel like it was grazed on, but it was too little to show up on any testing. But it was enough to completely wipe out all the tomatoes in here. They were so gnarled. Tomatoes had to be pulled out. A lot of the peppers died. Some of them ended up producing, but the beans shriveled up and died within a week. So now that's our canary in the coal mine. Like, whenever we bring new soil in, we sprout some beans in it to see if it may have that contaminant. And with this soil, as we've made those remediation efforts, we'll sprout some beans in it to see if it's still growing. The beans that we planted over there, because we were testing that soil before we put nightshades in it this year, and they're all growing beautifully. So far so good here. They look really healthy, so that makes me hopeful. Well guys, this cold is really starting to sink in on me. I'm definitely a frost tender flower. Thank you guys for hanging out with me today. God bless you. Until next time.